The atmosphere in the Federal Bureau of Hunters Command Center was tense. Director David Brennan was visibly displeased by the news his team had failed to recruit Sung Jin Woo, the powerful hunter they desperately wanted on their side. As the assistant director entered the office with Norma Selner, a specialist with extraordinary abilities, Brennan wasted no time. He fixed them with a sharp gaze and demanded an explanation, determined to understand where their efforts had gone wrong. Michael explained that, based on Norma Selner's observations, Sung Jin Woo wasn't just an ordinary hunter, he was one of the kings. The revelation left director Brennan stunned. He immediately asked if this meant Sung Jin Woo's power rivaled that of a national-level hunter, someone with unparalleled strength and influence. Norma Selner began to explain further. She revealed that all awakened hunters drew their power from a realm known as the other side. Her unique ability allowed her to sense the connection each hunter had to this realm. Occasionally, the energy from the other side was so overwhelming that certain hunters appeared to her as blinding streaks of light, those she identified as monarch. However, Sung Jin Woo was unlike anything Norma had ever encountered. She shivered at the memory, her voice unsteady as she described it. When she looked into Jin Woo's eyes, she didn't see the usual connection to the other side. Instead, she was consumed by an endless void of darkness so vast and overpowering that it seemed to swallow everything in its path. Sung Jin Woo didn't borrow his strength from anywhere else. He was the source of his own power. There were no limitations, no connections to channel his abilities. He was the darkness itself, a force beyond anything Norma had encountered before. The director, deep in thought, asked if this meant Sung Jin Woo was an evil person. Norma clarified that her observation wasn't about good or evil, but rather the nature of Sung Jin Woo's power. Unlike other hunters, Jin Woo didn't rely on an external connection to draw his strength. This absence of reliance meant that the usual limitations didn't apply to him, making him an unparalleled force. As Norma's words sank in, a chill ran down Michael's spine. The gravity of the situation was undeniable. Sung Jin Woo's power was boundless, unrestricted by the constraints that governed other hunters. The realization left him uneasy, and he shivered involuntarily. Norma met his gaze and nodded solemnly, affirming the terrifying truth that they were dealing with a force unlike any other. Director Brennan, now fully grasping the magnitude of what had been revealed, turned to Norma Selner and thanked her for her insight. The room was heavy with silence as everyone processed the implications of Sung Jin Woo's unprecedented power. Michael's gaze followed Brennan as the director suddenly stood from his desk, his expression resolute. It was clear he had already formed a plan, though what it entailed remained a mystery to those around him. Michael's curiosity grew as he asked where Director Brennan was headed. Brennan didn't hesitate and instructed him to follow him to basement level 24. The two men moved quickly toward the elevator and entered. As the elevator descended, Brennan began to speak, his voice serious. Brennan explained that if they couldn't use Norma Selner's abilities to recruit Sung Jin Woo, they would have to find another way. He reminded Michael of the first ever S-rank gate that had opened, an event that no one would ever forget. Michael nodded, remembering the catastrophic dungeon break that had decimated the entire West Coast. In response to the disaster, America had recruited the world's strongest hunters, offering them enormous rewards. Of those who participated, only 5 had survived the raid, earning the title of national-level hunters, a rank that granted them authority on par with entire nations. Among the monsters they faced was Kamish, the dragon known as the Inextinguishable Flame. Kamish had single-handedly slaughtered hundreds of top-ranking hunters, leaving a devastating mark on history that would never be forgotten. As they reached the basement level, Director Brennan asked if Michael believed there was a silver lining to that tragedy. Michael hesitated, but soon realized what the director was implying. Brennan confirmed his suspicion as they entered the last room on the level. Inside the room, Brennan walked over to a safe and carefully opened it. He revealed a heavily secured runestone encased in a tempered glass box. This runestone had been salvaged from Kamish's remains. Brennan explained that 8 years had passed since the Kamish raid, yet there had still been no mage-class national-level hunter. The runestone had been lying dormant in this cold basement, its rightful owner still unknown. However, Brennan believed that Kamish's death would not be in vain and that the dragon would once again bestow a valuable gift upon their country. As he stared at the runestone, Brennan's mind raced with possibilities. He hoped that this powerful artifact could be the key to solving their current predicament, offering them a solution they so desperately needed. In Jin-Woo's house, he stood before the bathroom mirror after his shower, studying his reflection. Since his reawakening, he had grown a few inches taller and his physique had become noticeably more defined. Despite these changes, Jin-Woo couldn't help but wonder if he had truly transformed that much. In his mind, he still saw himself as a slim, average-looking individual. Jin-Woo wondered if the buffs from the Will to Survive ability were behind his changes, as it restored all bodily damage, possibly even improving his skin. Curious how others saw him, he glanced into the living room, where Jinna lay on the couch, focused on her phone. Grinning, Jin-Woo decided to ask Jinna what she thought of his appearance. Jinna, unimpressed, teased him, calling him a bum. Amused, Jin-Woo pinched her head, prompting her to kick at his shin, only to hurt herself in the process, as was their usual playful routine. Amused by their banter, Jin-Woo reminded Jinna of his strength and jokingly questioned how someone with such a bird brain managed to get into school. Jinna, unfazed, proudly claimed she was at the top of her class. Jin-Woo quickly countered, pointing out it was only for her mock exams. The conversation took a turn when Jin-Woo brought up his plans to start a new guild. Intrigued, Jinna asked what name he had in mind. Jin-Woo suggested Solo Play Guild, but Jinna immediately objected, pointing out that it didn't make sense since he relied on summoning shadow soldiers, making him far from a true solo player. After hearing Jin-Woo's idea, Jinna proposed the name Ahjin Guild. She explained that symbolized I and Jin symbolized to go forward. Jin-Woo found the name clever, especially when Jinna revealed it was simply her name spelled backward. Amused by her creativity, Jin-Woo agreed that Ahjin Guild was a fitting name for his new guild. That night, Haein lay under her blanket, her face burning with embarrassment. The memory of her earlier conversation replayed endlessly in her mind. She couldn't believe she had said, "I think so." It felt like a confession, and the thought made her curl up, cringing at her own words. As she burrowed deeper into her blanket, Haein couldn't help but wonder how Jin-Woo had taken her words. She remembered how he had asked if there wasn't a better way to handle the situation than by joining the guild. It left her questioning his thoughts on the matter, unsure of what he really meant. At the time, Haein had used the excuse of needing to think it over to escape the conversation. But now, whenever she replayed that moment in her mind, her thoughts went blank and her face flushed with embarrassment. She couldn't shake the feeling of regret for how she had handled it. She told herself it was natural to be interested in Jin-Woo, considering he had saved her life. But deep down, she knew her feelings were more complicated than that. Her thoughts then drifted to Min Byung-yu, the healer whose abilities had truly saved her. She couldn't ignore the impact he had on her, even if Jin-Woo had played a significant role in her survival. Suddenly, a faint memory surfaced her voice she had almost forgotten. Haein sank deeper into her thoughts, desperately trying to grasp the fleeting recollection. It was recent, yet felt so distant, like a dream fading the moment she woke up. The memory tugged at her mind, pulling her away from the darkness of her confusion. A voice echoed faintly, speaking about Jin-Woo, urging her to remember. Slowly, the memory began to form, becoming clearer. It was Byung-Yu's shadow, his usual calm demeanor replaced with an unusual whirring. His eyes, filled with concern, locked onto hers as he spoke. He had told her to warn Jin-Woo, to tell him to be careful of the power he possessed. The weight of his words lingered in her mind, and the sense of urgency in his voice unsettled her. The realization sent a chill down Hein's spine as she suddenly woke up from his trance. At the Knights Guild, the atmosphere was tense as Yunta delivered important news to Jong-soo. A new gate had appeared the previous day, and Yunta informed him that securing a raid permit would be difficult due to the gate's high rank. The challenge was significant, and Jong-soo could sense the weight of the situation. The gate, though not S-rank, was dangerously close, prompting Jong-soo to acknowledge the risks. Yunta noted that if it were S-rank, they'd have to abandon it, as the guild lacked the manpower for such a challenge. However, as one of the top 5 guilds, failure wasn't an option without harming their reputation. Jong-soo felt frustrated, knowing that many underestimated the difficulty of ranked gates, assuming they were all the same. Yunta added that if they passed on this gate, the Fame Guild would likely take it, making Jong-soo's eye twitch with irritation. The thought of giving up a gate so close to their territory was infuriating for Jong-soo. While their rank hunters were strong and on par with those in other major guilds, the absence of an S-rank hunter remained their biggest limitation. As they debated their options, Young-yerim and a rank healer joined the discussion. She proposed forming an alliance with another guild, but Jong-soo remained skeptical. He doubted any guild would agree, knowing the Knights Guild sought help because they weren't confident in clearing the gate alone. Young-yerim suggested involving an individual hunter instead of forming a guild alliance. Jong-soo was skeptical at first, doubting a single hunter could make a difference in such a dangerous raid. However, when she mentioned Sung Jin Woo, he reconsidered. Partnering with Jin-woo could not only increase their chances of clearing the gate safely, but also boost the guild's public reputation. Yunta noted that Jin-woo had recently cleared a rank gate on a highway, but had otherwise stayed under the radar. Jong-soo decided that such an important matter required a personal approach. Resolving to contact Jin-woo directly, he planned to visit him in person to discuss the proposal. The next day, Jin-woo arrived at the office with a decision about the guild's name, Ahjin Guild. Jin-ho was thrilled with the choice, relieved that it wasn't something like Solo Play Guild. With the name finalized, Jin-woo and Jin-ho realized they needed one more founding member to complete the team. Curious, Jin-ho asked why Jin-woo hadn't chosen Hunter Cha-haen. Jin-woo simply replied that she wasn't the right fit for their guild, leaving Jin-ho confused but hesitant to press further. Cha-haen was an S-rank hunter that young, accomplished, and undeniably beautiful, seemingly perfect for their guild. However, Jin-woo had a different vision. He sought someone with a hunter's license who wasn't interested in joining a guild but could still be trusted completely. As they discussed potential candidates, a knock at the door interrupted them. Jin-woo briefly wondered if it might be Hunter Cha-haen again. However, when he opened the door, he was greeted by 3 unfamiliar faces: Park Jong-soo, the guild master of the Knights Guild, accompanied by Yunta and Young-yerim. Jong-soo introduced himself and presented a video of a massive gate that had appeared in Busan. The gate, towering and emitting an overwhelming amount of mana, was unlike anything seen before. Despite its size and intensity, it had yet to be officially classified as S-rank by the association. The gate was the largest ever to appear in Busan, creating an urgent situation. As Jin-woo watched the footage, his thoughts briefly wandered to Busan's local delicacies, considering whether he should visit Juhee and have her treat him to some sashimi while he was there. Meanwhile, Young-yerim quietly wondered if it would be inappropriate to ask Jin-woo for an autograph. However, Park Jong-soo quickly steered the conversation back to the pressing issue at hand. He informed Jin-woo that the Hunters Association was refusing to grant them a raid permit for the massive gate, citing the lack of an S-rank hunter in the Knights Guild. The association believed the raid would be too risky without an S-rank hunter. However, there was a chance they could secure the permit if Jin-woo agreed to join the assault team. To sweeten the offer, Jong-soo promised Jin-woo 20% of the profits, a generous share compared to the typical 10% that S-rank hunters usually received. Jin-woo, however, had a different idea. He proposed a 50% share, which took Jong-soo by surprise. Jin-woo explained that he would only join them if they treated him as part of a guild, not just as an individual hunter. He also mentioned that he was in the process of founding his own guild, called Ahjin. Sweat trickled down Jong-soo's face as he tried to negotiate, offering a 40-60 split instead. However, Jin-Woo wasn't interested in haggling. Realizing that Jin-Woo was no pushover despite his young appearance, Jong-soo reluctantly agreed to the 50-50 split. However, Jong-soo added one condition: Jin-Woo would need to defeat the dungeon boss. Jin-Woo readily agreed. Jong-soo then explained that, since the gate had been discovered for a while, the raid needed to take place the next day at the latest. He offered to give Jin-Woo a ride to Busan, but Jin-Woo declined, saying he had plans for the day and would join them tomorrow instead. He assured them that he wouldn't be late. As they were wrapping up the meeting, Yoonta noticed something odd. He thought he saw Jin-Woo's shadow move. Jong-soo dismissed it, wondering if Yoonta had been drinking. Just as the meeting was about to end on a positive note, Jin-Woo's phone began vibrating on the table. Checking the caller ID, he saw a number he didn't recognize. Excusing himself, he stepped outside the office to take the call. To his surprise, the familiar voice of his mother, Kyung-hee, greeted him. She had just bought a cell phone and called simply because she wanted to hear his voice. Jin-Woo, happy to hear from her, suggested they have dinner together that night, as it had been a while since they last spent time together. Kyung-hee agreed, and Jin-Woo looked forward to the evening, eager to spend time with his mother. The next day at Gwangali Beach in Busan, all the elite hunters of the Knights Guild gathered at the meeting place, the air thick with excitement as they anticipated the upcoming raid. However, Guildmaster Jong-soo was filled with nervousness. He anxiously awaited Jin-Woo's arrival, regretting not insisting that Jin-Woo come with them the day before. Time was ticking down, with only 5 minutes left before they needed to start the raid. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo stepped out of his apartment building, dressed casually in comfortable clothes and sneakers. He glanced up at the sky, noticing gray clouds gathering, briefly wondering if his sister, Jin-Ho, had remembered to take an umbrella with her. But that thought quickly passed as he focused on the task ahead. Jin-Woo knew it was time to move. He activated Shadow Exchange, seamlessly swapping places with his shadow soldier to reach the meeting point in an instant. At Gwangali Beach, a large crowd had gathered, their eyes fixated on the enormous gate that had appeared, despite the gloomy clouds hanging overhead. Among the onlookers was Jin-Woo, who observed the scene intently. The gate was even more imposing up close, its massive size daunting. Jin-Woo took note of the various teams assembled for the raid. The hauling team was stationed on one side, while the mining team was on the opposite end. The assault team, consisting of 13 A rank hunters and 20 B rank hunters, stood ready. Jin-Woo couldn't help but be impressed by the sheer number of A rank hunters present. It was a testament to the strength of the Knights Guild, known for having the highest number of A rank hunters under their command. Unyielding, the Knights Guild's healer, approached Jin-Woo with a friendly smile, introducing herself and hoping for a smooth collaboration. Her presence eased some of the tension surrounding him. Guildmaster Park Jong-soo, relieved by Jin-Woo's arrival, greeted him warmly and quickly briefed him on the raid, his excitement evident at having such a powerful ally on their side. Jin-Woo was caught off guard when Jong-soo revealed he hadn't informed the team about the raid's leadership. Addressing the group, Jong-soo declared himself as the leader, being the guild master. While the announcement was met with murmurs of disappointment, with many hoping Jin-Woo would take charge, Jin-Woo remained indifferent, focused solely on his role in the raid. Despite the hunters' dissatisfaction, Jong-soo clarified Jin-Woo's role as the backline protector, ensuring their safety during the raid. Some hunters, confident in their skills, questioned the need for such protection, underestimating the challenges ahead. Jong-soo brushed off the remarks, commending their confidence, and signaled the start of the raid. With preparations complete, the group advanced toward the gate, steeling themselves for the unknown dangers inside. At Jin's high school, 3 male students reluctantly carried out an errand for their art teacher, grumbling about the unfairness of being burdened with extra tasks. Their destination was the second art classroom, now repurposed as a storage room. Unlocking the door, they were greeted by a thick cloud of dust, evidence of the room's long abandonment. The storage room was a mess of forgotten art supplies, crumpled drawings, and dusty statues used for practice sketches. As the students debated how many statues to bring back, one of them spotted something unusual in the corner. Intrigued, the others joined him. There, embedded in the wall, was a gated shimmering blue hole about the size of a person. The largest of the three confidently approached the gate, assuring the others it was harmless and nothing could emerge from it. To prove his point, he placed his hand on the shimmering surface. The room fell silent until a faint cracking sound broke the tension. They watched in shock as fractures spread across the gate, their confidence quickly turning into fear. As a hand shot out from the gate, it seized the largest student's head in an iron grip. He struggled, but the hand's strength was overwhelming. A sickening crack shattered the air, and blood sprayed across the room as his head was crushed. The remaining two students froze in horror before screaming, their friends' blood staining their faces and clothes. The gate shattered, and a horde of magic beasts poured through, unleashing chaos. Among them, orcs led the charge, brutal, instinctive predators with unmatched hunting skills. Though their intelligence paled in comparison to humans, their natural instincts made them deadly. As the beasts spread out, they wreaked havoc, tearing through everything in their path with relentless precision. Now that the barrier between their dungeon and the human world had vanished, the orcs began pouring into the open. Two of these monsters, eager from the scent of blood, had managed to suppress their natural instincts for a week. Assigned to scout, they had stayed hidden in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now, with the barrier down, they were ready to unleash their fury. With their heightened senses, the orcs quickly detected the presence of nearby prey. The first orc, sensing the structure they were in, realized it was brimming with potential victims. Multiple floors above were teeming with unsuspecting humans. The leader orc, driven by the excitement of the hunt, growled in anticipation. It was time to begin the carnage. The leader orc signaled to his companion to summon their brothers, preparing for a full-scale assault once they had taken control of the building. As he moved through the dimly lit corridor, he spotted two students up ahead, casually talking, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. A wicked grin spread across the orc's face as he silently advanced, eager to claim their lives before the real hunt began. With a swift, brutal motion, the orc swung his axe, sending the students into a panic. They had no time to react as the massive creature closed in. Fear overtook them as they realized their fate was sealed. Meanwhile, the orc, driven by pure instinct, reveled in the chaos he had unleashed. In the Hunters Association Emergency Center, tension filled the air as an urgent call came through. The experienced receptionist quickly answered, her tone steady and professional. On the line was a teenage girl, her voice trembling with fear and her words fractured by sobbing. The receptionist worked to calm her, gently asking how she could help while piecing together the gravity of the situation. The girl revealed she was hiding in her school's bathroom, while terrifying magic beasts roamed outside. Struggling to speak through her fear, the girl explained she hadn't been alone at first, but her friend was now gone, leaving her to face the nightmare on her own. The receptionist urged the girl to stay calm, reassuring her that hunters were on their way. The girl, slightly more composed, asked if she would survive. To keep her grounded, the receptionist continued offering comfort and asked her to describe the monsters. Hearing of their human-like bodies and green skin, the receptionist identified them as orcs. Realizing the danger, she told the girl to escape, but it was too late. A blood-stained orc appeared. The orc entered the bathroom, the sound of the door being ripped open echoing through the phone. Desperate screams for help followed, only to be silenced by a final, blood-curdling cry. The receptionist, now trembling with fear herself, could do nothing but listen helplessly as the call abruptly ended. Anguished screams reverberated through the school as chaos unfolded. Less than half the students managed to escape the building, while the rest either lay lifeless on the ground or fled desperately from the relentless orcs. Chaos consumed the school as students fled in terror, their cries of fear mingling with desperate pleas for help and frantic shouts about friends still trapped inside. "Just keep running," someone shouted, trying to rally the fleeing students. Amid the chaos, orcs loomed over lifeless bodies, blood dripping from their axes, their cruel eyes gleaming with twisted satisfaction. The orcs, though frustrated by the escape of some prey, remained unbothered. Their instincts assured them that many humans were still trapped within the building. On the top floor, where the 12th grade classrooms were located, students like Jin sat huddled in fear, their breaths shallow as the sound of heavy footsteps grew closer. Screams from below echoed chillingly through the hallways, a constant reminder of the horror approaching. Inside the classroom, the makeshift barricades offered little comfort to the trapped students. Boys clutched chairs and a mop, their hands shaking with fear, fully aware of their inability to stand against the monstrous orcs. The classroom erupted into chaos as the door was shattered, and the chief orc stormed in, his blood-stained figure a terrifying sight. Students scattered in panic, their screams filling the air. One boy, driven by desperation, made a dash for the back door, but his attempt at escape was cut short as an orc, anticipating his move, struck him down mercilessly. The boy's lifeless body hit the ground with a sickening thud as the axe remained lodged in his forehead. The remaining students, frozen in terror, realized their dire predicament. Both exits were blocked by the monstrous orcs, leaving them with no way out. Pressed against the walls, they faced an agonizing choice: leap from the 6th floor to certain death or confront the bloodthirsty creatures closing in. Despair filled the room as they awaited the inevitable. Trembling in the corner, Jin's thoughts raced as she hugged her knees, trying to steady her breath. The fear surrounding her was suffocating, but in the midst of it, she held on to a single, fragile hope: her brother, Jin-Woo. Closing her eyes tightly, she whispered his name in her mind, clinging to the belief that he would somehow hear her and come to her rescue. In that moment, it was the only thing that kept her from losing all hope. The chief orc's gaze fixed on Jin, its bloodlust intensifying as it sensed something unique about her. Amid the chaos, her presence stood out, a silent beacon to the creature's predatory instincts. The air around her seemed to pulse with an energy that the orc could not ignore. The chief orc's eyes glowed with a deadly resolve. Jin had become its prey. With cold determination, the orc lifted his axe, his eyes locked on Jin. She watched in horror as the weapon rose above her head, her heart pounding with fear. Desperately, she shut her eyes, bracing for the inevitable. But just as the orc prepared to strike, something unexpected happened. Black smoke began to rise from Jin's shadow. In an instant, a high orc clad in black armor emerged, gripping the chief orc's wrist tightly. The armored shadow soldier, with a swift and powerful strike, sent the chief orc soaring through the roof, ending its reign of terror in a single, devastating blow. More high orcs appeared from the shadows, forming a protective barrier around Jin. They stood ready to eliminate any remaining threats, ensuring her safety and instilling awe in the terrified students. The scene moves to the dungeon entered by the Night Guild members and Jin-Woo. When they entered, they saw the vast passages felt like they were made for giants. As he advanced, a loud scream broke the silence. Jong-soo shouted in panic. A two-headed ogre appeared at the entrance, its red eyes glowing menacingly. The two-headed ogre, wielding a massive club, charged forward, swinging with tremendous force. Jong-soo, the group's tank, stepped up, using his abilities to summon a shield just in time to block the crushing blow. He stood firm, his determination unwavering as the ogre's attack collided with his shield. With Jong-soo holding the line, Yoon swiftly dashed in, his sword moving like lightning. Leaping onto the ogre, he expertly slashed at both of its eyes, causing the beast to roar in pain. Yoon signaled the rest of the group to attack, urging them to strike with all their might while the ogre was momentarily blinded. The Knights Guild hunters executed a synchronized counterattack, their blades cutting deep into the ogre's tough hide. Frontline hunters moved as one, while the mages, positioned behind, unleashed powerful spells. Fireballs and lightning bolt rained down, igniting the battlefield and inflicting devastating damage on the massive creature, adding to the chaos and confusion of the intense battle. The ogre, battered by cuts and burns, finally fell with a thunderous crash. The team stood victorious, having taken down the formidable monster without a single injury. Jong-soo called for a brief regroup, recognizing the difficulty of the raid. He pointed out that encountering a twin-headed ogre at the dungeon's entrance was highly unusual and ominous, signaling that the challenges ahead might be even greater. Jin-Woo, recognizing the creature as a gravekeeper, explained that it was a harbinger of an army of undead lurking deeper in the dungeon. Jong-soo confirmed this, adding that it usually indicated a larger threat ahead. However, as the hunters observed, they noticed something odd: the undead weren't charging toward them as expected. Instead, they seemed to be retreating, backing away from the group. Suddenly, a jolt of adrenaline shot through Jin-Woo as his heart raced. Jin-Woo's senses flared as he picked up alarming signals from the high orcs he had stationed to protect Jinna. A sense of urgency gripped him. Something was wrong at her location, and he couldn't ignore it. His expectations for the dungeon's challenge faded into the background as his concern for his sister took priority. The situation in the dungeon became secondary as he readied himself to leave, knowing that Jinna's safety was at stake. Jin-Woo reassured Jong-soo, telling him that the team was strong enough to handle the rest of the dungeon. With a determined look, he explained that family mattered more in this moment and he had to leave. Jong-soo hesitated, but understood the gravity of the situation. Though reluctant to lose such a valuable asset, he nodded, giving Jin-Woo his blessing. He informed Jong-soo of the urgent matter and assured him that he'd summon someone reliable to replace him. Without wasting time, he summoned Beru, the powerful Ant King, whose terrifying presence caused the other hunters to step back in fear. Jong-soo, still shaken by the appearance of Beru, tried to rally the team, but the hunters couldn't shake their unease. Despite their worries, Jin-Woo's calm demeanor and confidence were enough to reassure them. He explained that with the 20 soldiers he summoned, including Beru, the raid would proceed smoothly. As the team readied themselves, they couldn't help but wonder if they'd be able to handle the challenges ahead with such an overwhelming presence on their side. Yerim, still stunned, hesitated before questioning Jin-Woo's choice to leave after summoning such powerful soldiers. His cold gaze and blunt response shut her down immediately. Jin-Woo made it clear that if they didn't want his help, he could recall his minions, but the responsibility would fall on the Knights Guild. Jong-soo, sensing the gravity of the situation, quickly agreed, leaving the rest of the team, including Yerim, speechless at Jin-Woo's unwavering confidence and determination. Jin-Woo cursed inwardly as he checked the cooldown for his Shadow Exchange ability. Frustration surged through him when he realized there was still over an hour before he could use it again. The timing couldn't have been worse, but Jin-Woo knew he couldn't afford to wait that long to act. Without a moment's hesitation, Jin-Woo vanished from the strike squad sight. Jong-soo, stunned, muttered that Jin-Woo had actually left, while Yunjin nervously asked what they should do next. But Jin-Woo was already focused on his mission. Filled with rage, he moved quickly, determined to clear his path. The undead magic beasts blocking his way sensed his overwhelming power and, without a fight, dropped to their knees, bowing before him. Jin-Woo was briefly taken aback. Could the undead be reacting to his necromancer abilities? He didn't have time to think about it. With a swift motion, he dismissed the dagger in his hand back into his inventory and sprinted toward the exit. As he ran, he summoned Kazel, his winged wyvern, cloaked in black steam, ready to assist him in escaping the dungeon. As Jin-Woo emerged from the dungeon, the onlookers stared in confusion. Why was Hunter Sung coming out alone? Ignoring their questioning gazes, he swiftly climbed onto Kazel's back. With a single command, he urged the wyvern to fly as fast as possible toward his sister. Kazel roared in response, its powerful wings propelling them into the sky, ready to smash through any obstacles in their way. The spectators watched in awe as Kazel soared into the sky, carrying Jin-Woo toward his destination. In the classroom, an orc's head shattered with a single powerful blow, its body collapsing to the floor. The soldiers Jin-Woo had hidden in Gina's shadow revealed their terrifying strength. The students, horrified, watched as the once feared beasts were overpowered by an even more monstrous force. The two remaining invaders attempted to flee, but the high orcs, having just crushed their captain's head, swiftly grabbed them by the necks, sealing their fate. The orcs, desperate to escape, stopped resisting once their heads were slammed hard against the floor. The impact caused their skulls to burst, and two lifeless bodies hit the ground with a heavy thud. The students, stunned by the brutal display, began to realize that these high orcs had saved them. No longer seen as the monsters they once feared, the orcs had become their protectors. The three orcs attacking the classroom were swiftly dealt with, and the high orcs now stood silently, guarding Jinna. Still in shock, Jinna asked about her brother, wondering where he was. However, the high orcs remained silent, not answering her. They wouldn't let her leave their side, knowing the dangers that still lingered within the building. As if to confirm their caution, heavy footsteps echoed up the stairs, growing louder with each passing second. The ominous sound filled the air, signaling the arrival of a greater threat. Suddenly, a gate cracked open with a thunderous boom, and a throne emerged. The final restriction had been lifted. Unleashing the dungeon's master, the orc leader Grokter, chief of the Crimson Blade tribe, stepped forward, declaring his unstoppable power. Grokter's subordinate hurriedly reported that a group of high orcs was helping the humans. Grokter, unimpressed, asked how many there were. Upon hearing there were only 3, he sneered, dismissing the idea that his tribe's warriors couldn't defeat them, calling it pathetic. Lifting his massive axe, Grokter commanded his subordinate to lead the way, determined to crush any resistance in his path. Grokter's eyes gleamed with murderous intent as he prepared to slaughter everyone in his path. The battle between Grokter and High Orc warrior is inevitable. The High Orc warriors, though strong, were no match for Grokter, the chieftain of the Orc tribe. Moving with agility, Grokter effortlessly dodged the High Orc's attacks and drew the curved blade from his waist, ready to strike down anyone who dared to challenge him. Outside the classroom, the orcs that had been forced to retreat by their enemies cheered, chanting Grokter's name. They believed their leader would easily overpower the high orcs. Grokter, boasting about his victories, pointed to the tattoos that covered his body, each one a symbol of the many enemies he had slain, further fueling his pride and confidence as he prepared to crush anyone standing in his way. Despite the high orc's strength, they struggled to keep up with Grokter's relentless attacks. He taunted them, daring them to put up a better fight. When they managed to block his sword, Grokter acknowledged their effort but remained dominant. With his swift motion, Grokter sliced through the high orcs, expecting them to fall before his overwhelming power. To his surprise, the high orcs regenerated, rising again and again despite his efforts. Grokter wondered if this was some kind of spell, but no matter how many times he cut them down, they kept coming back. The realization that he could kill hundreds of them without ending the battle began to frustrate him, as his once unshakable confidence began to crack. Meanwhile, a voice in Grokter's head urged him to kill the humans. The constant nagging gave him a headache, but he knew he couldn't ignore the high orcs to pursue the humans. The battle seemed endless, but Grokter was determined to finish it, no matter the cost. He realized that if the high orcs were controlled by some magic, he only needed to eliminate their shaman to break their control and finally end this unyielding fight. As Grokter scanned the room, his eyes locked onto Jinna, who stood trembling behind the high orcs. A faint connection between her and the high orcs became clear, and Grokter's eyes blazed with realization. He was certain that she was the source of their power. Without hesitation, Grokter commanded his subordinate orcs to capture her, knowing that the high orcs' regeneration would make them powerless while they focused on her. The orcs surged forward, surrounding the high orcs and preventing them from reaching Jinna. Grokter, confident in his plan, advanced toward her, his massive form cutting through the chaos. The High Orcs struggled to fend off the Orcs' relentless attacks, their regeneration not enough to break free. Grokter, sensing victory, continued his advance, determined to capture the girl and end this battle once and for all. Grokter's grip tightened on Jin's neck, his malicious intent clear in his eyes as he prepared to end her life. But then a deafening roar shattered the tension. The unmistakable cry of a winged dragon reverberated through the air. Grokter's instincts flared as he felt an overwhelming power approach. His gaze snapped toward the source of the sound, realizing that something terrifying was closing in rapidly. Grokter's heart pounded as the sound of the creature grew louder, sending a surge of anxiety through him. His instincts screamed in warning, and with a growl of frustration, he released his grip on Jinna. She collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, her body trembling. Her friend rushed to her side, panic in their voice as they checked if she was okay. Grokter's attention was riveted to the approaching menace. The screech reverberated through the air, each note carrying an overwhelming sense of dread. As the sound grew deafening, his eyes widened and his jaw tightened. For the first time, Grokter, chieftain of the Crimson Blade tribe, felt an inkling of fear. The sheer magnitude of the power racing toward him was unlike anything he had ever faced. Grokter bellowed commands to his warriors, urging them to prepare for the unknown force. Yet their response was too slow. A thunderous explosion ripped through the building, shaking its very foundations. Glass shattered, walls crumbled into dust, and the orcs stationed at the door were hurled away like ragdolls. In an instant, the classroom's exterior wall was obliterated, leaving behind a gaping void as though a divine hammer had struck with unrelenting fury. Amidst the destruction, Jinna coughed as dust and debris filled the air. Suddenly, a familiar presence appeared by her side. It was Jin-Woo, her brother, standing over her protectively. He gently patted her head, offering reassurance. She could feel the weight of the tension lifting, knowing she was safe now. Grokter swallowed hard, his confidence faltering in the face of Jin-Woo's overwhelming presence. The aura around Jin-Woo crackled with power, leaving no room for doubt about who held control. Grokter, trying to maintain some semblance of authority, introduced himself as Grokter of the Crimson Blade tribe. But before he could finish his declaration, Jin-Woo's hand rose, pointing directly at him. An electrifying aura enveloped Jin-Woo, his eyes filled with fury. He glared at Grokter, his voice cold and commanding. Jin-Woo silenced him with a simple but powerful instruction: shut up and wait. Jin-Woo rubbed his sister's back with a calming gesture, offering silent reassurance. Once her coughing eased, Jinna, tears streaming down her face, threw her arms around him, seeking comfort. He gently stroked her hair, his touch protective and soothing, as if to shield her from all the fear and chaos surrounding them. Apologizing for his delayed arrival, he checked on the students, who nodded nervously, assuring him they were unharmed. His sharp gaze shifted to Song-Yi, silently confirming her condition. Although she affirmed her safety, an unsettling chill lingered in her mind. Jin-Woo's overwhelming presence, calm yet radiating an almost tangible intensity, made it impossible for her to suppress a sense of quiet fear. A fierce blue light flared in Jin-Woo's eyes as he spotted the bruised handprint marking Jinna's face and neck. With a silent command, Igris stepped forward and enveloped her in protective steel, allowing Jin-Woo to gently disentangle his sister despite her instinct to cling to him. In that moment, he summoned a force of shadow soldiers equal in number to the remaining students. The Dark Guardians formed a tight perimeter, each one poised to shield the terrified youths from any threat. Jin-Woo commanded the shadow soldiers to escort the students downstairs. The orcs, furious at their prey escaping, growled in frustration. Jin-Woo, with a fierce glare, froze them in place. Kazel, its massive wings spread, soared through the broken building as the shadow soldiers guided the students to safety. Grokter, watching the scene unfold, realized the High Orcs were Jin-Woo's soldiers. He questioned him, trying to understand who he was and how he spoke their language. Jin-Woo, however, remained silent and unresponsive. Sensing that Jin-Woo had no intention of answering, Grokter decided not to waste any more time. With a commanding shout, Grokter ordered his forces to attack. The fierce orc warriors lunged at Jin-Woo, but to him, they moved so slowly it felt like time had slowed down. One orc swung its massive axe, but Jin-Woo swiftly grabbed its fingers, crushing them with ease. The orc screamed in agony as Jin-Woo flipped it upside down, slamming it into the ground and crushing it beneath his foot. Two more orcs charged, but Jin-Woo used his skill, Commander's Touch, making them collide midair. With a simple clench of his fist, he made them burst into pieces. More orcs charged at Jin-Woo, their screams echoing through the hall. Without breaking a sweat, he weaved through them effortlessly, crushing them with ease. He didn't need a weapon, using just his finger to strike and obliterate the orcs in his path. Wherever Jin-Woo's finger touched, whether it was their heads, shoulders, arms, or stomachs, the orcs exploded on impact. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 orcs had fallen. Jin-Woo came to a stop in front of Grokter, who struggled to follow the blur of afterimages left by his movements. Grokter's voice trembled in disbelief, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. Before he could react, Jin-Woo grabbed the orc chieftain's jaw with his left hand. Grokter let out a short gasp as Jin-Woo casually strode forward and slammed his head against the wall. The loud wham echoed through the empty hall. Jin-Woo scanned the area, taking in the gruesome sight of dead students littering the hallway. He didn't turn away. Instead, he made sure to take stock of every single corpse, ensuring that the one responsible for this massacre would pay for its sins. Jin-Woo's cold gaze returned to Grokter as he demanded answers. His voice was icy as he asked why Grokter's kind was so intent on killing humans. Grokter, trembling in fear, confessed that a voice in its head kept telling it to kill all humans. Jin-Woo pressed further, asking if the voice instructed Grokter to kill him as well. Grokter, desperate and fearful, pleaded for forgiveness. But Jin-Woo was relentless, demanding an answer to his question. Did Grokter hear the voice when looking at him? Grokter continued to beg for forgiveness. Without hesitation, Jin-Woo summoned the Demon Monarch's dagger to his right hand, its dark energy crackling with power as he prepared for whatever came next. He coldly acknowledged that Grokter didn't consider him human either, but that didn't matter to Jin-Woo. He told Grokter that while he might forgive him, the path to forgiveness wouldn't be easy. And Grokter realized that his fate was sealed, no matter how much he pleaded for mercy. In the Knight's Guild dungeon, the hunters were gripped by fear as they stared at the sight before them. Some voiced concerns, urging to leave, terrified that these monsters might see them as enemies. Yunta, anxious, turned to Jong-soo for guidance. Jong-soo, deep in thought, realized they couldn't stop now. Despite the danger, he knew they had come too far and retreating would only spell disaster. The mission had to continue and they had to face the monsters head-on. However, as Jong-soo tried to muster confidence, Beru, the monstrous ant, approached him. The sheer size and intimidating presence of Beru caused Jong-soo's confidence to vanish in an instant. Stammering nervously, he struggled to maintain composure, attempting to speak politely. Despite his attempts, Beru showed no reaction, its piercing gaze fixed on Jong-soo. The silence only amplified Jong-soo's anxiety. Struggling to maintain composure, he tried again, his voice quivering as he attempted to sound even more deferential. But before he could finish, Beru suddenly vanished, the air cracking with a sound like a silenced gunshot. Jong-soo stood frozen in confusion, wondering where the monstrous ant had gone. Before he could even begin to search, a sense of unease washed over him. Beru reappeared suddenly, tossing an unknown object toward the group, its purpose unclear but unsettling. Without hesitation, he commanded the Shadow Ants. Responding instantly, the Shadow Ants formed precise formations, their synchronized movements exuding a disciplined and ominous aura. The group could only watch in silent awe as the army prepared to continue their relentless march. Yunta observed Jong-soo's unease and asked if he was sure about letting the Shadow Ants lead. Jong-soo, shaken but determined to maintain composure, nodded. He assured Yunta and the rest of the group that the situation was under control, though his lingering concern over Beru's intentions was evident in his hesitant tone. One of the hunters nervously pointed to the severed head that Beru had casually discarded. Jong-soo's eyes widened as he recognized it was the head of a Death Knight, a monster renowned for its immense power and resilience. Amazement replaced his initial shock as he realized the effortless strength Beru possessed to defeat such a formidable foe. The revelation of Beru's overwhelming strength sparked a glint of ambition in Jong-soo's eyes. As he processed the potential fortune hidden within the magic stones of such high-ranking monsters, a cunning smile crept onto his face. The Shadow Ants were proving to be an unstoppable force, and the thought of what they could achieve together filled him with a growing eagerness to press onward. While Jong-soo examined the Death Knight's head with fascination, the rest of the Knights Guild had already begun advancing. Following the disciplined march of Beru and the Shadow Ants, Yunta's voice broke through Jong-soo's thoughts, urging him to keep up. Snapping out of his daze, he quickly rejoined the group, and together, they pressed deeper into the dungeon with renewed determination. Beru and his Shadow Ants annihilated the undead army, their relentless advance leaving shattered bones and ash in their path. Amid the chaos, Yerim spotted the body of a high-ranking vampire, its magical essence still potent. Acting swiftly, she dragged the corpse away just before a Shadow Ant could consume it, her sharp instincts recognizing its immense value for research or trade. Yerim's frustration boiled over as she scolded the Shadow Ant, knowing the vampire's body held significant value. However, the creature was undeterred, its insatiable hunger overcoming her protests. With a swift motion, the ant devoured the vampire's remains, leaving Yerim helplessly watching as the opportunity vanished. Beru's appearance was like a force of nature, his sheer presence overwhelming the Shadow Ant. The creature faltered, its aggressive stance dissipating as it cowered before him. Yerim, still on the ground and clutching her bleeding shoulder, watched in awe as Beru's cold gaze silenced the ant. Without a word, Beru motioned for the ant to retreat, leaving Yerim shaken but unharmed, her anger still simmering over the lost opportunity. Beru's precise and seamless healing left Yerim astonished. The wound on her shoulder closed completely, leaving no scar, as if the injury had never occurred. She quietly thanked him, her gratitude tempered with curiosity. Watching the Shadow and Captain's skillful use of healing magic, Yerim couldn't shake the thought of how a summon could surpass a trained hunter like her in such a specialized field. It was both humbling and intriguing. The Knights Guild hunters froze at the overwhelming presence of the Arch-Lich. Its skeletal frame glowed with an eerie green light, and its hollow eyes burned with malevolent energy. The Death Knights surrounding it stood like statues of dread, their armor gleaming with dark magic. The suffocating aura of the boss room made the hunters hesitate, their confidence faltering in the face of such a powerful foe. The memory of the Gold Dragon Guild's downfall sent a shiver through the Knights Guild hunters. Jong-soo clenched his fists, realizing the stakes. Facing an Arch-Lich wasn't just dangerous, it was potentially suicidal without the right strategy. Yunta, sensing the imminent danger, turned to Jong-soo, desperate for guidance. However, before he could respond, the hunter's attention shifted to another threat. From behind, a relentless horde of Death Knights marched toward them, their armored steps echoing ominously, signaling that retreat was no longer an option. Jong-soo urgently shouted at his teammates, pointing out the horrifying truth. The undead not consumed by the Shadow Ants had risen again. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he quickly ordered the team to barricade the doors. Desperation fueled their actions as they scrambled to block the advancing horde, hoping to buy themselves precious moments to plan their next move against the relentless onslaught. Yerim reacted swiftly, activating her Holy Wall skill to erect a glowing barrier that sealed the doors, temporarily holding back the undead. Jong-soo's heart pounded as he assessed their dire circumstances, beads of sweat forming on his brow. The relentless assault of the undead and the presence of the Arch-Lich left him with one sinking realization: without Hunter Sung Jin Woo's intervention, Their odds of survival were practically non-existent. The Death Knight struck the holy wall with relentless force, each impact causing it to flicker and quake under the strain. Yerim's hands trembled as she struggled to sustain the barrier. Turning to Jong-soo, her voice carried a mix of urgency and fear as she warned him that the shield could only hold for a few more minutes. The weight of their dire predicament settled heavily on the team, leaving Jong-soo scrambling for a solution. At that critical moment, Beru advanced toward the Arch-Lich, who immediately recognized the Shadow Ents. Fear gripped the Arch-Lich, its form trembling with shock. In a voice laced with dread, it demanded to know why the monarch's personal army was attacking them. The sudden realization that they were up against a force far greater than anticipated filled the Arch-Lich with terror, but it could only wait for a response, uncertain of what was to come next. As Beru drew nearer, the Arch-Lich summoned over a dozen Death Knights to encircle the Shadow Ents, attempting to protect itself. Unfazed, Beru bared his mandibles and extended his claws, his voice cold and commanding. He declared that the Shadow Ents had been chosen by the king, a privilege the Arch-Lich could never claim. The words resonated with an undeniable authority, underscoring the vast difference in power between them. As the Death Knights took their positions, ready to fight, the Arch-Lich, brimming with indignation and disbelief, tried to assert its authority, insisting that it would speak to the king itself. But before the sentence could even finish, Beru moved with lightning speed, appearing directly in front of the Arch-Lich's face. The sudden movement was so swift and overwhelming that the Arch-Lich flinched, its confidence shattered as the cold, menacing presence of Beru towered over it. Without hesitation, Beru grabbed the pendant around the Arch-Lich's neck, thrusting both it and his fist into the stunned boss's chest. In one swift motion, Beru's hand emerged from the Arch-Lich's back, gripping the pendant, the source of the Arch-Lich's life. Desperate, the Arch-Lich shook its head in denial, but Beru remained unmoved, ignoring the creature's frantic screams as he crushed the pendant in his hand, sealing the Arch-Lich's fate. With a final, dismissive glance, Beru watched as the Arch-Lich disintegrated into nothingness. The Death Knights, bound to the Arch-Lich, crumbled along with their master, vanishing without a trace. In the blink of an eye, the once feared horde was gone, and the battlefield was left in eerie silence. The members of the Night Guild stood frozen, their eyes wide in disbelief. They had just witnessed Beru defeat the Arch-Lich with a single, decisive punch, and now, the once fearsome Death Knights lay motionless at their feet. Jong-soo stood in stunned silence, his mind racing as he tried to process the display of power. He had never expected such strength from their ally. Yunta, equally amazed, looked around at the devastation left by Beru and commented that with soldiers like him, Hunter Sung Jin Woo wouldn't even need to step into a dungeon. He could clear entire dungeons just by sending in his summons. Jong-soo nodded, acknowledging the point. While it was true that Jin Woo couldn't command all his summons at once due to mana limitations, even a fraction of them would outclass most guilds. The sheer power at his disposal was unmatched. Yunta, eager to seize the opportunity, urged Jong-soo not to waste any more time. He suggested they should try to acquire Sung Jin Woo's guild, recognizing that aligning with such a powerful force could change the course of their future. Jong-soo quickly corrected him, insisting it was not about acquisition, but forming an alliance. He envisioned a partnership between the newly founded guild of the world's finest hunter and the Night Guild, one of the 5 major guilds in the country. He felt the idea had a nice ring to it. Yunta nodded, impressed with the shift in perspective. An alliance, he mused. That sounds much better. Jong-soo could already see the potential benefits. The Night Guild's resources combined with Hunter Sung's overwhelming strength. It could change the balance of power within the entire country. With a thoughtful expression, Jong-soo began strategizing the approach to present this idea to Hunter Sung, knowing it would be a delicate negotiation. Yunta, joking at first, doubted if Hunter Sung needed their help after witnessing his power. Jong-soo, however, argued that despite Hunter Sung's ability to clear dungeons with his summons, a certain number of hunters was still needed for a raid. Jong-soo reminded Yoonta that no one was exempt from the basic rules of dungeon raids. Yoonta agreed, realizing that they could increase their fighting power while also providing Hunter Sung with the hunters he needed. It would be a win-win situation for both. Jong-soo laughed, pleased with their plan, while Yoonta voiced concern about riding on Hunter Sung's coattails. Jong-soo, still smiling, dismissed it, saying they simply had the right connections. The determination in his eyes showed he was ready to pursue the alliance, seeing the potential power it could bring to the Net Guild. A large crowd had gathered around the school, stirred by the incident. Parents and onlookers shouted in panic, desperate to get closer. The police and Hunters Association struggled to maintain control, trying to prevent the crowd from overrunning the area. Amid the chaos, a voice cut through, making way for Sung Jin Woo. Jin-Woo sat in the car as it began moving slowly. President Go provided an update, informing him that while 213 students had escaped safely, only 10 others were rescued from the building. Sadly, the rest hadn't made it out in time. President Go lamented that perhaps this tragic outcome could have been anticipated. President Go continued, sharing the data with Jin-Woo. He pointed out a significant spike in the number of gate appearances in Seoul over the last 6 months. This trend wasn't isolated to Seoul. Similar increases were being reported worldwide. Along with the surge in gates, there was also a noticeable rise in the number of people awakening as hunters. He emphasized how these developments were putting more strain on both the Hunters Association and the overall global situation. President Go elaborated, explaining that several major countries, including Japan, the United States, China, and Russia, had expressed a strong desire to meet with Jin-Woo. These nations were keen on discussing his role and influence, especially considering his power and the ongoing surge of gate appearances. Jin-Woo, sensing the gravity of the situation, understood that the world was shifting and he would likely be at the center of the changes yet to come. President Go cautioned Jin-Woo about the implications of leaving Korea. While the official requests were documented and the association had kept his personal information secure, there was growing concern over the country's future if Jin-Woo chose to travel abroad. With the rapid increase in gate appearances and the rise of new hunters, President Go emphasized that Jin-Woo's presence was crucial for Korea's stability during this turbulent period. As they reached the hospital, President Go earnestly appealed to Jin-Woo. He reassured him that the association would provide all the necessary resources to support him. He shared the sobering fact that Korea had once boasted 10 official S-rank hunters, but had lost 3-2 to monsters and 1 to the United States. With the situation escalating, the association could no longer turn a blind eye and was determined to offer Jin-Woo everything needed to face the coming challenges. Jin-Woo's request caught President Go off guard. He asked to be allowed to enter high-ranking gates alone, bypassing the minimum hunter requirement. This was surprising, as the law was meant to ensure the safety of hunters by preventing unnecessary risks. However, President Go quickly realized that this might be why Jin-Woo had formed his own guild, so he could operate independently without the constraints imposed by the current regulations. Jin-Woo asked if he was asking for too much, and President Go, though initially finding the idea of a one-man assault squad difficult, acknowledged that it wasn't entirely impossible. After a moment of consideration, he promised to do his best to make it happen, understanding the unique circumstances surrounding Jin-Woo's strength and abilities. As the camera flashed repeatedly, the photographer gave a nod of approval for Soohyun's performance. She smiled, pleased with the outcome. After wrapping up her shoot, her phone buzzed with a call from Jin-Ho. Jin-Ho invited Soohyun to join his new guild, assuring her that it would require no effort on her part. He suggested she might want to consider switching from her role, an ambassador for their father's guild, to joining his team instead. Soohyun, surprised by the sudden proposal, mentioned that their sister Jin-Hee would be returning to Korea soon, perhaps shifting the focus of the conversation. Jin-Ho, however, remained firm, encouraging her to think about the new possibilities. Jin-Ho, undeterred by Soohyun's skepticism, reminded her that they still needed one more founding member for their guild. Soohyun, half-joking, teased him about being tricked by some shady character, but Jin-Ho only smiled, promising she would be shocked by who that shady person turned out to be. After the call ended, Soohyun made her way to Jin-Ho's office, curiosity piqued and ready to learn more about this unexpected proposal. As Soohyun entered, she was immediately struck by the presence of Sung Jin Woo. Her gaze lingered on him in awe, realizing she was standing before one of the most famous hunters in the world. Jin-Ho, noticing her surprise, casually introduced her to Jin Woo, mentioning that Soohyun was his cousin and a certified rank hunter. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on Soohyun, who still couldn't quite believe she was in the same room with someone of Jin Woo's caliber. Soohyun was in awe when she met Jin Woo, still surprised to be in front of such a famous hunter. She couldn't believe he was the one who had disappeared after the incident at Lee Min-soon's press conference. Jin-Ho joked that she was the real celebrity of the family, but Soohyun stayed focused on Jin Woo, who quietly observed the interaction, contemplating the complex dynamics of the family. Jin Woo considered the situation carefully, noting the contrast between Jin-Ho's D rank and Soohyun's A rank. He wondered if genetics influenced the awakening process, recalling how some families had multiple awakened members. After confirming that Jin-Ho had explained everything to her, Soohyun reaffirmed her understanding of the guild's need for one more founding member. Jin Woo, with a sense of purpose, began to see how the pieces were falling into place for their future plans. Jin Woo warned Soohyun that joining their guild might attract significant attention and asked if she was prepared for the scrutiny. Soohyun, unbothered, replied that anything was preferable to dealing with Jin-sung. Intrigued, Jin Woo inquired about Jin-sung, prompting Jin-Ho to explain in a subdued tone that Jin-sung was his elder brother. Jin Woo, sensing a complicated family dynamic, nodded and decided not to press further, focusing instead on the task at hand. Known for his difficult personality, Soohyun commented that her brother seemed infamous even outside their family. While Jin Woo was momentarily distracted, Soohyun cautiously asked if he would take a selfie with her. He agreed, and she posted it online. The photo quickly went viral, fueling speculation and excitement, particularly catching the attention of Cha Hae-in, who couldn't help but take notice of the unexpected post. When Cha Hae-in saw the viral post, a wave of unease overcame her. Unspoken feelings stirred within, leaving her heart heavy and her thoughts restless.